This is KGW News at noon.
Colleagues, a quorum is not present for the proceeding of the Senate.
Well, it has happened once again in Salem. Republicans have walked out of the job, halting all voting and discussions in the state Senate. It comes ahead of voting on bills about abortion and gender-affirming care. There are only 17 Democrats in the state Senate and 20 lawmakers are needed for a quorum. Today, only 2 Republicans showed up on the Senate floor. Senate Republican leader Tim Knopp, blasted Senate President Rob Wagner in a statement that was released just about an hour ago. He called Wagner untrustworthy, deeply partisan, and argued that he's violating Oregon Constitution. Knopp says, and here are his words on the screen, laws are to be plainly written and easy to understand. When the majority of bill summaries that are written demand a postgraduate degree to understand what the bills do, we disenfranchise Oregonians across the state and violate the law in the process. Meanwhile, Senate Majority Leader Kate Lieber responded saying Republicans are undermining democracy. She wrote in a statement, and we're going to show those words to you as well. It is no coincidence that Republicans are employing these embarrassing antics as the Senate is about to vote on bills that protect reproductive health freedom and establish common sense gun safety laws. Now, you may remember last year, voters approved a measure that aims to prevent these walkouts. Lawmakers cannot run for re-election if they have 10 or more unexcused absences in a session. Tim Gordon is in Salem right now. He's talking with leadership on both sides of the issue. He'll have a full report for us coming up, starting with our news at 4 p.m. Meanwhile, one of our other top stories this afternoon at noon comes from Washington, where state lawmakers there are taking action on 2 separate pieces of legislation. One of them focuses on the penalties for drug possession. The other aims to loosen restrictions on police chases. So we're going to start here with Senate Bill 5352, which lawmakers passed last month. Today, Washington Governor Jay Inslee will sign that bill into law. It lowers the threshold of evidence that police need to chase possible suspects, but it only applies to certain offenses like violent crimes, sexual assaults, and DUIs. In 2021, the law in Washington changed to actually increase the threshold for police to initiate pursuits. But again, this new law scales back on that decision from just 2 years ago. Governor Inslee is also directing state lawmakers to reconvene in 2 weeks in order to reach an agreement on a new drug possession bill. The proposed bill would increase penalties for possession, but would also put a greater emphasis on treatment. Washington's current drug possession law expires on July 1st. The top political headline in Oregon remains Shemia Fagan's resignation as Secretary of State. She announced that decision yesterday, just 1 day after stepping down from her side job as a cannabis company consultant. Fagan's resignation follows ethical concerns over that position that she held for a company called LaMotta. Fagan said she took on the consulting role to provide for herself and her 2 children, saying that her $77,000 a year salary as Secretary of State simply wasn't enough. Here's KGW political analyst Betsy Johnson reacting to that.
It is inconceivable to me that somewhere a light didn't go on to say, while she believes she followed the letter of the law, the optics of this were so bad. She knew what the salary was of the Secretary of State before she ran.
Governor Tina Kotek said she backs Fagan's decision to resign, saying it will help restore Oregonians' trust in their government. Fagan's resignation officially takes effect next Monday. An Oregon bill focused on curbing gun violence is now on its way to the Senate. The House passed it yesterday. This bill bans untraceable firearms, also known as ghost guns. It would also raise the age to buy a gun in Oregon to 21, with only a few exceptions. Supporters call it modest but meaningful. Opponents, on the other hand, call it extreme and say it will not make Oregon streets safer.
Overall, it reflects a common sense approach to a problem we all wish, and I think I can speak for everybody, we all wish we did not have to try and solve.
We keep passing more gun laws and expecting gun violence to decline. Gun violence is not declining.
This is all happening, of course, as Gun Control Measure 114, which voters passed back in November, is still making its way through the courts. All right, we have 3 more local government headlines to share with you here at noon. The first, is an update on what's called the Right to Rest bill, which would make removing homeless camps from public property illegal. As we reported yesterday, this bill is not moving forward during this session, and the public hearing on the bill that was planned for this week has also been scrapped. So as it's currently written, this proposal would allow homeless people to sue for $1,000 if they're harassed or told to move without anywhere else for them to go. The Right to Rest bill made national headlines at one point, and the people who back the bill say they do plan to reintroduce it in the future. All right, second headline here, a plan that would help Oregonians and let Oregonians statewide pump their own gas. It's moving forward at this point. The state Senate held a hearing on this bill yesterday. The proposal would require stations to offer both self-serve and full-serve options. Supporters say it gives people a choice and will also help with staffing shortages at gas stations, but opponents say they're simply trying to save some of those jobs. This bill has already passed in the House. And thirdly, Washington's Attorney General, Bob Ferguson, is launching an exploratory campaign for governor. The exploratory campaign allows Ferguson to collect donations without formally announcing a run. This announcement comes just one day after Governor Jay Inslee announced he will not seek a fourth term. Like Inslee, Ferguson is a Democrat, and he's been Washington's Attorney General for over a decade. All right, taking a break from our news headlines for this live look outside downtown Portland on your Wednesday afternoon. Rodney Hill standing by for us right now in the Weather Center. So, Rod, what's happening there in your neck of the woods?
Well, it's been a beautiful day so far, certainly harmless. But my headline at noon is that things could rapidly change late afternoon into the early evening hours. Remember, we're still watching this low that's sitting all the way down off of the coast of California, but it is responsible for a continued threat of showers and thunderstorm development. And here's satellite radar right now. There's a little shower, the first one of the day, that's popped south of Bend. This could, in the coming hours, turn into a thunderstorm, and more development in that area is possible. So here's what we're looking at on Futurecast. 4 o'clock this afternoon, dry from Longview down to Eugene, but there are thunderstorms now moving north of Jefferson, around Mount Hood at dinner time, and then into East Multnomah County, Skamania County, parts of Clark County, up toward Mount Adams, and maybe even throwing some rain back in toward downtown Portland at 8:30 this evening. So if that track is true, the best chance to maybe even hear a rumble of thunder here in the metro would be the east side. Here's the way Gresham looks right now. Just kind of hazy sunshine. It's a camera off of Powell out at Gresham Subaru. But again, the east side, that's where you have the best chance of some thunder and lightning. Right now we are warm. We're getting warm, I should say. We're at 62. We're going to go for a high of 72. Again, late afternoon into the evening hours, we'll start to look at a storm chance with those storms rumbling up over the Cascades. Back to you, Drew.
All right, we'll have more from Rod coming up here in a few minutes with his full forecast. But right now, back to some more local headlines. And we start with this story about a man who's now in custody after he flipped his car in the middle of downtown Portland yesterday. He was running from police after they tried to write him a ticket for smoking fentanyl in the driver's seat. Wound up running 2 red lights and crashed into 2 other vehicles. We're told that the drivers of those vehicles, though, are expected to be okay. This all happened right near the intersection of Southwest 4th and Washington, which we know has been a hot spot for drug use and overdoses. A KGW crew was there when this happened, caught the aftermath on camera. You can actually watch our full report tonight on how police are trying to take a new tactic when it comes to responding to downtown Portland following an increase in overdoses and crime there. Meanwhile, Oregon Governor Tina Kotek is putting the brakes on tolling along I-205 until January of 2026. Tolls along 205 were expected to start closer to the end of next year. All right, so let's talk about this a little bit more because a group from Clackamas County had just introduced a bill in the legislature. If it had passed, it would have forced a pause on tolling as well. Tolls were again set to begin on the Abernathy and Tualatin bridges in Clackamas County late next year, but those plans did not sit well with local politicians and with local residents. Some are worried that it would push traffic onto city streets and that it would wind up being very expensive. We know tolls are estimated to cost between 60 cents and $2.20, depending on the time of day. A group called Vote Before Tolls is trying to get enough signatures to force a statewide vote on tolling.
And the idea is that it would force transparency by those that are planning to implement tolls. It is not no on tolls. It's not yes on tolls. It just says we get the right to understand how tolls are going to be used, whether they're going to sunset, what are the amounts, all those kinds of things up front.
Legislative leaders have set up a new subcommittee to oversee ODOT's infrastructure and modernization plans. A spokesperson for ODOT couldn't provide details on the impacts of the delay and says they expect to meet with the governor and the Oregon Department of Transportation and that commission here in the next few days.